My Gavanin greetings, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be able to start my series on alchemy and mysticism. I was inspired today by hearing a quote about when we empower others, we become more powerful. And so much of this information within this book called Alchemy and Mysticism from the Hermetic Museum has been collected throughout all the ages. And this was information that was only really shared between members and initiates in mystery schools. So this was quite hidden information, and only those that were part of these certain types of occults and these secret societies would have this information. So I'm very happy to go through this book with all of you and to include it as part of my channel to help others understand what it is that many people have known or have thought about the world, and the spiritual information and kind of insight that's kind of kept from the public. And much of the stuff that I go through, it might resonate with you. And I say this, take everything with a grain of salt, in the idea that if it resonates with you, then that can be part of what you believe. But if it doesn't resonate with you, then you do not have to accept it into your being. So it's really just a way to give us knowledge, because knowledge is power. And I wanted to offer this type of power on my channel. This is a wonderful book that I was able to purchase and to put in my Elven Library collection. So I'm going to start the clock, and I'm going to do 30 minutes each time we meet for this book. And I'm going to show you the pictures as well and read the captions, because the pictures are parts of stone tablets and artwork that has been discovered and has been kept within these secret societies. So they're also really important to look at. So I'm going to start the clock at 30 minutes so that I don't go too long with each of these videos. But I'm so happy that you all decided to join me tonight, and we can read this together. I've only glanced at it, so I haven't gotten a chance to read a lot of the book, so I am taking this journey with you all. So I'm very excited and happy to do this, just to confirm some of my own suspicions and beliefs, and also to learn something new. So we will learn together, right? Okay, I'm going to start the clock. So the first part of this book is that if you are interested in buying it, there's another version. This is the collector's version. So this is a little bit more expensive, and I broke it down into a couple different payments from a collector's book website. But this is by Alexander Rube, Alchemy and Mysticism, the Hermetic Museum, by Taschen. That's the publisher. So the very first page is of the Pilgrim. The Pilgrim, in the idea of the unenlightened man that is journeying into the doors of awakening into enlightenment. So a lot of this information is Gnosticism, and you're going to see Rosicrucian, Christian mysticism. You're going to see a lot of this all bring everything that they have believed and have been part of these secret societies for a long time. And a lot of this information is also what Wiccans today and even witches even believe, because there's a lot of elemental knowledge as well about nature and about the earth and what human beings are made of. So this is the first page here. It says, the introduction, it will be apparent that it is difficult to discern which properties each thing possesses in reality. And this is by Democritus, 8th century BC. So that to me means that this is almost like a prophecy of what we are seeing happening, is this human awakening, the awakening of humanity, where we are starting to see our similarities more than our differences. So what will become apparent is that it will be difficult to discern which properties each thing possesses, because everything will become one and merged with each other. So this is a prophecy from a mystic, Greek mystic, philosopher back then, saying that this is what will happen, is that eventually spirit, it knows itself as one thing. And we start to have this awakening. And so all the properties and the characteristics that we all share become merged with one another. And that's what kind of happens when you awaken into the idea we are one. You see separateness and you can discern between things, but at the same time, certain things start to blend in with each other, and it's hard to make out the differences. This is one of the things that happens with empaths. When you become an empathic person, your thoughts, your feelings, your visions, they can actually absorb the feelings and the visions and the dreams and the fears of others. So you have a hard time sometimes discerning what is yours and what is theirs, because those lines become blurred between each other, because you start to awaken into the divine union with all things. And so this is that prophecy here, or that idea that mankind will enter into that awakening, because that is really the only direction that spirit can go. I think that this was interesting to share. So very much believing in the zodiac sign, because we have all 12 zodiacs here, and a symbol that says Mira Bilitas Naturae. So if I can find out what that means in Italian, I definitely will. Let me see if I could do a quick Google and see. Because that actually is not Italian. What is that? Latin? It's more like Latin here. So that means Mira, and then Bilitas. And I think Naturas is probably nature. So let's see what this says. This is the miraculous ability of nature. So that's what's in that zodiac wheel. The miraculous ability of nature. All the elements together. Okay, so the first page, the Hermetic Museum. A rich world of images has etched itself into the memory of modern man, despite the fact that it is not available in public collections, but lies hidden in old manuscripts and prints. These are the internal halls of Logos, the prophet of the imagination, which are filled with the exemplary images and Platonic figures that govern our understanding of the world and ourselves, and of which the poet William Blake, 1757 through 1827, wrote that all things acted on earth are seen in them, and that every age renews its powers from these works. Jerusalem, 1804 through 1820. Puzzle pictures and linguistic riddles. By imbuing them with a special hieroglyphic aura, the creators of these pictures sought to suggest the very great age of their art and to acknowledge the source of their wisdom, the patriarch of natural mysticism and alchemy, Hermes Trismegistus. It was Greek colonists in late classical Egypt who identified their healing, winged messenger of the gods, Hermes, with the ancient Egyptian Thoth, or I've heard it's also Thoth, the thrice greatest, as the psychopompous, the soul's guide through the, Thoth was the god of writing and magic and worshipped like Hermes as a psychopompous, the soul's guide through the underworld, The mythical figure of Hermes Trismegistus was also linked to a legendary pharaoh who was supposed to have taught the Egyptians all their knowledge of natural and supernatural things, including their knowledge of hieroglyphic script. The alchemists the alchemists saw him as their Moses, who had handed down the divine commandments of their art in the emerald tablet. This tabula smaragdina, now believed to date back to the 6th through 8th centuries AD, became known to the Christian world after the 14th century through translations from the Arabic. So many of you have heard about the emerald tablet and Thoth. And this is that Egyptian god that many of you know. He had he was basically, let me see if I can find a picture I can bring up. I believe he had the ibis bird type of head. So he had, yes, he did. So he had that look to him. Many of you probably have seen this. So this is kind of connected to him, and this is where Freemasonry and Gnosticism is connected to ancient Egypt as well. So we'll get more into that. I hope I'm saying that word right. I'm just pronouncing it, I guess, if it's said differently in Egyptian, I'm not quite sure, but it's Thoth. There was hardly a single alchemist in either the laboratory or the speculative, mystical camp who was not prepared to bring his discoveries into line with the solemn and verbatim message of these 12 theses. So these are the 12 theses. True, true, without doubt, certain, the below is as the above, and the above as the below, to perfect the wonders of the one. And as all things came from the one, that sounds a lot like the Silmarillion with Eru, from the meditation of the one. So all things are born from this one by adaptation. And for those of you who are new to my channel, the Silmarillion was the original notes written by J.R.R. Tolkien that created Middle-earth. Like, what was it that was the powers behind Middle-earth, and how did we get the elves, hobbits, and men, and all that? So the story is that everything arose from the mind of Eru, and then the Ainur were these beings that sang everything into existence that came from his mind as thought forms. So it sounds kind of similar. We'll keep going. And as all things came from the one, from the meditation of the one, so all things are born from this one by adaptation, actually. Its father is the sun, its mother the moon. The wind carries it in its belly. Its nurse is the earth. So this is where we get the feminine and the masculine ideas of the masculine as the sun, the feminine as the moon, and the mother earth kind of imagery. It is the father of all the wonders of the whole world. Its power is perfect when it is transformed into earth. Separate the earth from fire, and the subtle from the gross meaning large. Cautiously and judiciously, it ascends from earth to heaven and then returns back to the earth, so that it receives the power of the upper and the lower. Thus you will possess the brightness of the whole world, and all darkness will flee you. This is the force of all forces, for it overcomes all that is subtle and penetrates solid things. Thus was the world created. From this wonderful adaptations are effected, and the means are given here, and Hermes Trismegistus is my name, because I possess the 3 parts of the wisdom of the whole world. Also from Hermes, messenger of the gods, comes Hermeneutics, Hermeneutics, the art of textual interpretation. And according to the author of the Buch der Heiligen, der Flachenkeit, Book of the Holy Trinity, 1415, the first alchemical text in the German language, this occurs in 4 directions: in the natural, supernatural, divine, and human sense. And I'm going to just go back here. I just want you to see. So this is what the Emerald Tablet was said to look like. The Emerald Tablet, the central monument to the Hermetic imagination. So this is a drawing of the Emerald Tablet that they kept in Hanover. And this was the artist Heinrich Kuhnroth, Amphitheatrium, Sapitri Anterne, Hanover, 1606. Interesting. So that is that piece of art there of the Emerald Tablet. As used by its most distinguished representatives, alchemical literature possesses a suggestive language, rich in allegories, homophony, and wordplay, which, often through the meditation of Jacob Boehm's theosophical works, has had a profound effect on the poetry of Romanticism like Blake or Novalis, the philosophy of German idealism, Hegel and Schelling, and on modern literature, Yeats, Joyce, Rimbaud, Brenton, and Artaud. So Yeats was always a famous poet of, he wrote a lot about fairies. He had that famous quote that came from the poem, the idea that our senses, when they become sharper, will be able to see magical things. So he is connected to this type of mysticism and this type of knowledge of Jacob Boehm, and then that is also connected to Hermes Trismegistus. I think that's how you say his name now. And then here is the wind bears it in its belly. The birth of the philosopher's stone occurs in the air. So now we have the image of Father Air. And then we have this, or its nurse is the earth. Mercury water nourishes it. So then you have Mother Nature and Father Air. So for those that read the Silmarillion, it's like Manwë, king of the air. And then you have Yavanna, the feminine figure of earth. I'll keep going. Many voices, even from within their own ranks, were raised against the obscure idioms of the alchemists, and their own account of their communication technique hardly sounds more encouraging. Wherever we have spoken openly, we have actually said nothing, but where we have written something in code and in pictures, we have concealed the truth. And this is Rosarium Philosorium Weinheim edition, 1990. So the truth, these spiritual messages are actually embedded in these different types of puzzle images and imagery that you may find in this book. Anyone who inadvertently enters their linguistic arena will suddenly find himself in a chaotic system of references, a network of constantly changing code names and symbols for arcane substances in which everything can always apparently mean everything else, and in which even specialists, Baroque dictionaries, and modern lists of synonyms provide few clues. This kind of profusion of diffuse concepts always required simplifying measures. These might be said to include the influential attempts at interpretation by the Swiss psychoanalyst C.G. Jung, who was solely interested in the eternal nature of the hybrid form of alchemy and only not acknowledged its external chemical workings as a scientific projection of psychological developments. So this is our Carl Jung, our famous psychoanalyst that we have known to talk about shadow work and that type of looking within. He has that famous quote that many of you know, the idea that those that they look withinward, they awaken, and those who look outward into the world, they stay asleep. So obviously he understood a lot of these types of mysticism and kind of spiritual interpretations. So he is noted as being one that was influenced by this information. But the Hermetic philosophers can be heard more freely, distinctively, or clearly, with a silent speech or without speech in the illustrations of the mysteries, both in the riddles presented with figures and in the words. With their thought, pictures they attempted, according to a motto of the Rosicrucian Michael Mayer, to reach the intellect via the senses. To this extent, their highly cryptic, pictorial world can be placed under the heading of one of its favorite motifs, the hermaphrodite, as a cross between sensual stimulus, Aphrodite, and an intellectual appeal, Hermes. It is aimed at man's intuitive insight into the essential connections, not at his discursive ability, which is largely held to be a destructive force. So what they're saying is that these types of images, they trigger something within the subconscious mind. And so what you'll get is you'll get this like intuitive spiritual understanding, but you might not be able to prove it. You might not be able to maybe express it or teach it to others in a way that can be concretely understood. And there is a reason behind that, because it's all part of kind of the self-awakening. And so it triggers the subconscious mind by looking at these types of pictures that we will be going through. Lots of them. I really highly recommend, getting this book if you can. It's on Amazon if you want to take a look. I can leave the link in the description if you want to pick one up for yourself. So it's highly cryptic, and it's supposed to give balance to the sensual stimulus of beauty and art, and then also to inspire the logical reasoning side of you, the Hermes. And so it is aimed at the intuitive insight into the essential connections between things. And that's what it's supposed to do. So it's hidden in plain sight. It is there for those that are ready to awaken and to trigger the subconscious mind that has these types of spiritual information already embedded within them. But the material world and the way that we go through our lives, sometimes we forget these things. So these groups of people got together in order to, what they believed they were doing was helping to awaken humanity. And that was their ultimate goal. And we all have different ways of doing that. And this was theirs, was to hide spiritual messages and things that would help to bring forward the subconscious mind by looking at them. So here it is. That which lives on reason lives against the spirit, wrote Paracelsus. Along with him, many lived in expectation of the third empire of the Holy Spirit. The third empire of the Holy Spirit. Prophesied by Joachim of Feor, 1130-1202, in which visionary insight would replace literal textual understanding. The primal language of paradise, which names all things according to their true essence, would then be revealed again, and all the mysteries of nature would be presented as an open book. The primal language of paradise. So whatever they believed that Eden was, the primordial state of man, which is a consciousness that is uncorrupted and untainted by this material world and the effects of living within it. To get back to that place, they believe that this is how you do it. That there was a prophecy that one day the true essence of the human spirit would be revealed again, and all the mysteries of nature would be presented as an open book. Well, that would be lovely. Visionary insight would replace literal textual understanding. You know what movie that reminds me of? Is Arrival, if you have seen it yet. The new one with Amy Adams. When she meets the aliens, that is the language that they use. They use images to describe time, emotions, and moments. And it's not our contextual understanding of what we know when we read words. So they don't use words. And so that's what he's saying, is that there will come a time where humans won't need words, but they will be able to, I guess, just understand the nature of everything when they look at a visionary, when they get visionary insight, which is done by art, shown in art and shown in these different types of puzzle pictures. The tendency towards arcane language in obscure speeches, in numbers and enigmatic pictures is explained by a profound skepticism about the expressive possibilities of literal language, subjected to Babylonian corruption, which holds the Holy Spirit fettered in its grammatical bonds. The prehistoric knowledge, the Prisca sapientia, and I know that word has to do with prime wisdom. I think that's what it means, prime wisdom, that was revealed directly to Adam and Moses by God, and which was handed down in a long elite chain of tradition, had to be preserved in such a way that it was protected against the abuse of the profane. To this end, Hermes Trismegistus, who was like Zoroaster or Pythagoras and Plato, was seen as a major link in this Hermetic chain, developed hieroglyphics. The Renaissance idea of Egyptian hieroglyphics took them to be a symbolic rebus-like esoteric script. This was influenced by the treatise of a 5th century Egyptian by the name of Hor Apollo, in which he provided a symbolic key to some 200 signs. Oh, like Apollo, the sun god of Greek. That makes sense. This work, entitled Hieroglyphica, which was published in many translations and illustrated by Albrecht Dürer, among others, prompted the artists of the Renaissance, including Bellini, Giorgione, Titan, and Bosch, to develop the language of signs in their own imaginative way. Hor Apollo's Hieroglyphica was formed the basics for the development in the mid-16th century of emblems, symbols, which not only the illustrations to the Atalanta, but also many of the engravings for the gigantic book publishing enterprise of Mayer's English friend and colleague, Robert Flood, 1574 through 1637. The Euterkis Cosmi Historia, the history of the two worlds, in several volumes. Identifying his intellectual background with some exactitude, detractors called Flood Trismegistus Platonic Rosicrucian doctor. His actual achievements in the field of natural science may not have been of any great significance, but the vivid expression which he gave to many contemporary impulses are important for an understanding of Elizabethan culture, particularly the dramas of Shakespeare. Flood deserves a status within cultural history which has hitherto been withheld from him. I am grateful to Dietrich von Donat for informing me that Flude gave the De Bry printing works very detailed drawings on which to base their engravings. And I just wanted to go back here. And I think I actually passed a page. I did. That didn't make any sense. I'm so sorry about that. So let me just go back here. So this is copy of Dürer's illustration to Horo Apollo. So this is Hour Watching, Impossible, and Heart, the ibis or the ibis. And you can see the little figures there. So Hour Watching, and then you have that Egyptian head of the bird, the ibis. And then this is Hermes. Hermes, Mercury, god of trade and communication, urges silence. Mercurial eloquence refers to the phenomenal periphery, the revealed world of appearances, the experience of the effects of the spiritual century, unit of monas, is inaccessible to the expressive possibilities of language. So he's saying that it's inaccessible to just regular language, like everyday language. And so these types of wisdoms have to be hidden within the art that you see. So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 7. 1, yeah, 2, 4, 6, 7. So we have 7 flames, a 7-flame candle. And he's standing on top of some Greek letters here. So if you really wanted to study these symbols, and people do, you can then try to look at these pictures, and then you could figure out, like, what do they say? And many people have done that with the dollar bill by reading what the Latin means on our actual dollar bill, and what that means. Novus, what is it? Scrotum, scrotium or something like that. Saccharum. I think that's the word. Yeah, that's it. So we have, and that is chaos before order. So whoever created our dollar bill basically believes in this idea that when you hide spiritual information, you create almost like a talisman. And when people carry those around, they are carrying the energies of the intentions of the makers of the dollar bill. So that's why there's all these hidden symbols within the dollar bill, because it comes from this idea to hide things within art or within a picture that will trigger the subconscious mind. So I'll go back to that other page. I'm so sorry. So this was just connecting here where it talked about Horo Apollo's hieroglyphica also formed the basis for the development in the mid-16th century of emblems, symbols, which are always connected with a short motto and generally accompanied by an explanatory commentary. They were very popular in the Baroque and proved to be an ideal vehicle for the communication of paradoxical, alchemical teaching aids and maxims. Pseudo-hieroglyphics were thus connected with pseudo-ancient Egyptian wisdom. Oh, I'll keep going. I'll just finish this one page here because I don't want to end with that since I didn't read this one yet. So he's saying there was some pseudo-hieroglyphics and pseudo-ancient Egyptian wisdoms, since the majority of the Hermetic scripts that tended to be found in attics or the niches of old walls proved to be pseudo-epigraphs masquerading as works by eminent figures in the Hermetic tradition. Emphasizing their broad theoretical foundations, the alchemists often termed themselves philosophers, describing their work simply as art or philosophical art, although the alchemical concept of art is derived from Aristotle's technique and refers very generally to skill in both theoretical and practical matters. Its similarity to the extended concepts of art in the modern age is unmistakable. It is not, as one might immediately assume, the illustrative and fantastic spheres of the traditional visual arts, in which the links to the Hermetic opus magnum, the great work of the alchemists, are revealed, but rather those areas that involve the aspect of process in the experience of reality, such as conceptual art and fluxus. So there's a channel on YouTube called The Great Work. If any of you are interested, it is somebody that has a lot of knowledge about how to decode a lot of these symbols of these secret societies. His name's Mark Passio, and he is a light occultist, meaning that he is trying to demystify this information for the public masses. Because at one point, the only ones who had all this information were the ones that kept it secret from the public. So they kept it in their vaults and they passed it down through their mystery schools, but the actual public could not have that information. We are in an age of time when there are a lot more de-occultists or light occultists, they're called. And I guess I'm one of them because I'm working in this way, where we're trying to bring this information to the surface so that it's not something that's hidden from the public anymore, and that we can figure out together as a collective, okay, so what really makes sense? What's really true? Or what is it that just connects to the times when these types of mysticism and spiritual things were thought about? And then we can figure out, well, what are the universal truths that we can all connect to within the subconscious mind? So check him out. It's called The Great Work, Mark Passio, and he goes through all of this type of information for you. The heyday of Hermetic emblems and the art of illustration coincided with the decline in classical alchemy, which was still capable of combining technical skills and practical experience with spiritual components. Theosophical alchemists like Rosicrucians and practicing laboratory chemists like Andres Leibovitz, who sought to improve the empirical foundations of alchemy and thereby brought it closer to analytical chemistry, which already irreconceivable by the beginning of the 17th century, were already irreconceivable. So alchemy, if many of you do not know, it has a lot to do with chemistry. It is about trying to take elements from the periodic table and combine them together and create something new. Really, it's about a spiritual message too, because it's about the transformation within, because we are made of the elements. So these types of alchemists, they were using chemistry to show how you could take simple elements and create gold from them, or you could create silver. And so they were trying to show that you could take the elements within ourselves and you could make the human spirit become golden, become enlightened and have that representation of spiritual awakening. So that's kind of what they didn't understand at that time. But it says, although Rosicrucians did boast that godless and accursed gold making was easy for them, this was a ludicrous and marginal pursuit in comparison with the main pursuit of inner purification. Their gold was the spiritual gold of the theologians. Okay, so that's what I just said. So there were some alchemists that were purely interested in making more gold for themselves, because gold is very valuable and it makes you rich. But the Rosicrucians were interested in the inner purification of the soul that would make you rich in a spiritual way, not the way of a materialist to become rich with money. It's more about the spiritual gold. But these two divergent trends could lay claim to the same founding father. Okay, another name here. Theophratius Bombastris von Hohenheim, also known as Paracelsus, 1493 through 1541. So I have a video on Paracelsus because he was the first one to come up with the elements, the idea of the water nymphs, the fire salamanders, the rock goblins, and the air sylphs, the air fairies. So I show where that kind of connects to Tolkien within my video that I have on Paracelsus, because that elemental knowledge about nature is also seen in Middle Earth, because in Middle Earth, the elves are enamored by the water. And so there's a lot of connections to different elements depending on the different beings of Middle Earth. Like the dwarves, they represent the rocks. And so then you have the hobbits of earth. And then you have, all these different types of elemental types of imagery. And so Paracelsus was the first one to come up with that, and basically divided the different elements into these different elemental beings that he said lived within the matter of those elements and in a dimension of the elements. So they didn't live in our dimension, they lived in the dimension of water, they lived in the dimension of air, and they solely would stay there unless dimensions got crossed. So here is, in his work, the empirical study of nature takes place against a visionary and mystical background. His prodigal body of work contains both numerous instructions for the manufacture of pharmaceutical preparations on a vegetable and metabolic basis, and a practically inexhaustible wealth of natural mystical concepts in the spheres of astral magic, the Kabbalah, and Christian mysticism, dressing these up in highly individual, bombastic, linguistic creations did nothing to reduce their wide dissemination. These writings would exert an influence for centuries, extending from the speculative interpreters of alchemy, from Weigel, the Rosicrucians, and Jacob Boehm, to the Romantics and modern branches of anthroposophy and theosophy, and also Wicca and witchcraft. And the other thing too is you will see it in the new movie Frozen 2. They actually use the elements of Paracelsus. You have the fire salamander, the little fire lizard. You have the air sylphs, the little air fairies that you cannot see, known as Gale, the wind, in Frozen 2. So take a look at that movie, because it is influenced by these elements that Paracelsus came up with. With their two playful manifestos, in which they promised more gold than the King of Spain brings back from the two Indias, a group of Protestant theology students have given a powerful boost to the production of alchemical writings at the beginning of the 17th century. Even in the 18th century, this kind of printed matter dealing with the search for the lapis, the philosopher's stone. Ooh, so lapis lazuli is the philosopher's stone. We're seen in such members at German book fairs that one could make the road from Frankfurt to Leipzig, lovely and soft, and even with them. J. G. Volkamer the Younger, Adeptus Fatalis, Freiburg, 1721, quoted in J. Telly Bemerkungen zum Rosarium Philosophorum in Rosarium Philosophorum, Weinberg, 1992. So he has a lot of references here, and I'm so sorry if I can't get these words right, but my German is not so good here. One of the many sympathizers with the Invisible Lutheran fraternity was Lucas Genus, the publisher of the first Museum Hermeticism, published in Frankfurt in 1625. Although the number of illustrations in this collection of treatises hardly does justice to its title, it does contain a number of excellent engravings by Matthias Marian in 1593 through 1650, a year previously, under the title, oh, that's a long one, Chemical Garden of Delights. That's the English word. That's the English title. Genus has published a collection of alchemical illustrations taken from books published by his company. The individual illustrations are accompanied by rather unenlightening lines from the pen of Daniel Stolzkowitz von Stolkenberg, a pupil of the Paracelsian physician Michael Mayer, 1568 through 1622. Meyer had been physician to Emperor Rudolf II, known as the German Hermes, whose Prague court was home to the most famous esoteric scientists of the day. In 1618, Meyer published his famous collection of emblems at Atlanta Fuegians with the Oppenheim publisher Theodore de Bry. To Marion's marriage to de Bry's daughter, we owe not only the illustrations to the Atalanta, but also many of the engravings for the gigantic book publishing enterprise of Meyer's English friend and colleague, Robert Fluke. So then this is what I was reading before. And this is the picture here. The Kitcher Museum in the Collegium Romanum. And this is in Amsterdam, 1679. And then you have a picture of the alchemists within this place here, and some cherub angels at the very top, symbolizing this holy endeavor. Okay, so we're now at Neo-Platoism and also Gnosis of the Gnostics. So with that, I'm going to end, and we could talk a little bit about what we heard there, and then I will definitely pick up with the Gnosis and Neo-Platoism and see what more they have to talk about. So some interesting things there. I mean, if anything kind of stuck out to you about this, I would love to hear from you. Let's go to the chat here. So I'm so happy to see all of you. This is great. Time to get all mystical. Exactly, Naren. Yes, definitely. The guy who invented democracy. Oh, Pythagoras. Are you talking about, or Hermes Trismegistus? Yeah, I don't know. I think so, because the Greeks were very, very known for democracy and government. I mean, they basically were the creators of it. So let me see his political and religious teachings, and let's see if he had anything to do with democracy. Vegetarianism. I don't see. Okay, so he had politics. Let me see the main interests. It comes from the Greek word politica, and I would say that yes, his interest was in politics, and I think it's probably going to go into that and get more into that idea. But yes, that idea is definitely, I think, connected to him. He's connected with many things. He's kind of known as like the father of Greek philosophy, along with Plato, but he really helped inspire a lot of different types of systems. So I'll get back to you on that, because I can't find it right away, but it did say that one of his interests was politics. So yeah. So good comment there, because yeah, it brings in another idea of like, well, then did our American government get a lot of our ideas from alchemy and mysticism? And I could probably say that a lot of our forefounders and even those that are in charge now, they may have some idea, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're too far removed from that spiritual aspect of things. But definitely, I think our forefathers and many of our founding representatives definitely had some of this information. And I mean, I think that's very clear. Let's see. Ooh, higher ego. I think our ancient ancestors might have had abilities we consider magic. Seems they were more connected to stars and earth. Well, that's kind of what, if we had to take up the whole message of this book, it would probably be that as humans reconnect to nature and they find those elements within ourselves are exactly what's in earth and as well as in the universe, there will be this greater spiritual awakening. And yes, we will be in touch with our magical and psychic abilities and really, tap into the unlimited potential of the mind. I believe that that's what they were thinking. And a lot of this information was not kept just for nefarious ideas, but it was because they didn't believe that the public would understand this information. So it was passed down until it was time that the majority of the public could actually take in this information, and that it wouldn't be wasted energy, basically. So we're in that time now, and a lot of you see that the Illuminati are coming out and all this, and we have lots of different types of New Age philosophies and things like that that are very connected to some of the teachings that you find in this book. So yes, I definitely think so. Higher ego. That was a great comment. And then we have, yes, Emerald Tablets of Thought, the Atlantis. And yes, Atalanta, that probably is definitely connected to Atlantis. So I think that there's a connection there. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because now we can actually go into this book a little bit more and see what they were talking about. There was a lot of name droppings that maybe some of you have heard before. Jacob Boehm, Yeats, William Butler Yeats, some other types of poets like Shakespeare. So a lot of it, I mean, it's all connected. It really is. And when you start to put the connections together, you start to see that mysticism and alchemy and these spiritual kind of ideas have been floating around within our society for a long time. And they have been what has kind of created some of our societal structures. But I do think that the message has gotten lost in many ways, and we'll go into it. And maybe by the end of the book, we can figure out, well, what was the important messages and what was the messages that gotten lost over time, and what did we forget, and how did corporations and societal institutions not really pass down this information that, their ancestors were passing down to them through these Ivy League schools and these mystery schools. You hear about it, Skull and Bones and all those secret societies. This is the type of information that they should be passing down within those secret societies. Are they doing that? Or is it just a place to groom politicians? And this is where I think that we need more mystical types of people within our places of power, but not tyrants, not dictators, and to use this information for the good of all, and for the awakening of everyone, and the equality of everyone. And I think that's where somewhere the message has gotten lost. So yes, this book is cool, Sabrina, right? Yeah, it is. I mean, I can't believe how much information is in it, and I'm really glad that I have it, and I'm excited to go through it with you all. I mean, this is going to take some years, so this is what I'll be doing along with the Elven Light University, of course. But I'll definitely be working on this with you because I am a mystic, and this is what I can offer as an interpreter of some of these ideas and kind of help bring this information out there a little bit more, and have you, be able to think about something of what has created our world, in terms of these types of secret societies have been in charge of our world in many ways. And so we need to figure out, where did the message get lost? What happened? And I think by the end of this book, we'll be able to do that. Naren, it's not that it can't be said in words, but rather the image shows the discrete knowledge in a condensed and complete form. Yeah, and it might be hard to express in words, but you could if you really thought about it. But yeah, it's about that discrete knowledge that can only be really gathered through looking at a picture that has all these complicated ideas, these spiritual ideas and imagery and symbols attached to it. And like I said, it triggers that subconscious part of you. What does the 8-pointed star mean? Well, we'll probably get to that because there's a lot of different types of star symbols. Absolutely. So thank you for joining me. We're going to definitely, going to start off with the Gnosis, and that's the Gnostics that we know, and then we'll talk more about that for next time. I am really excited to go on this journey with you all. So I hope that you learned some things, heard some names that you can do some research more about, and also take a look on Amazon. If you want to follow along with me, we can make this a book club, and we could just follow along with each other when I do these videos. So I'll put the link in the description for you. Like I said, the one on Amazon is not going to look like this with like the gold pages and everything. If you are interested in this, I'll try to put the link as well for the collector's book, but I will put the one for just the regular Amazon version. I'm not sure that there's a big difference. So I'll put both of those links in the description. So everyone have a wonderful night. I'm glad that you were able to join me, and I'll see you all in the next video.